on this computer. And here we go. Finally arrived. I'm so excited. It's been a long time coming. People have been asking us for an incredibly long time for exactly this. I was talking to a producer last night and he said, we asked for potash in it and we did it. So that's very exciting. And with me today is the people that made it happen. Neil Wiens, inventor of Bio-Sul, now Super KS and Replenish. How are you doing this morning, Neil?
I'm grand, my friend.
He's coming at us live from Okotoks, Alberta. Elston Solberg, our guru, our agronomic guru, who's helped get us here all these years later. How are you doing there today?
Super fantastic. Had an early Thanksgiving meal with the family last night. Most everybody showed up. It was awesome.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
No blood, no nothing. It was all good.
No cat scratches?
No, all good. Really
good for you. Yeah, we're looking forward to Sunday, getting together. Harvest is done and yeah, start to regroup for 2021, if you can believe it. But I want to thank everybody that took time out of your day to be here. And I want to speak to the people that I can't see on this call. There's 40 some of you now. And I wanted to ask you why you're here. Of all the things that you could be doing today, why are you here? And I thank you so much for coming. But are you here because you've been a Bio-Sul user, it's been working good, and you want to upgrade that? Are you here because you've been really focused on nitrogen on a farm, but you want to know more about potash and sulfur together? Are you here because you want to get a handle on the most important ratio on your farm, N to S? And well, besides financial ratios, we won't get into that. That's a different show. And the second most important ratio is N to K. So we've got both of these in this product and we want to kill two birds with one stone. Are you here because right behind nitrogen, potash is a close second in terms of volume of nutrient required? Are you here because you want your stomata to operate efficiently in drought conditions? Are you here because you want to understand the potassium cycle in your crops, in your soil? Are you here because you want to understand which crops you're going to see a response with K in? Are you here because you want potassium to shuttle energy around in your plants? Are you here because potash is part of a well-balanced plant diet needed to be healthy and productive and able to fight off disease? Elston, you can start playing the piano anytime here. This would be. Are you here because you heard that over 7,000 tissues we analyze across Western Canada were almost 70% deficient in K? Are you here because you're wondering why you need potash when we have some of the richest potash reserves in the world right under our feet? In fact, they're mining underneath our farm at Langenberg from Rokenville. Are you here because you're aware we're mining potash from our soils? Not only our mines, but our soils at the surface. Are you here because you want to understand the agronomics of broadcasting potash on the soil surface, given that it's not an extremely mobile nutrient? Are you here because you want to find out more about the logistics of handling and spreading this product, this new product, Super KS? Are you here to understand how this product can be spread accurately? Are you here because you refuse to put potash through the seeder because of the wear and tear of these $1 million rigs? Right? And are you here to make that rig more efficient? Are you here to hear what Neil Wiens, the mad scientist, has up his sleeve next? Are you here to see how long Elston's gorgeous mane has become? I know that's one element of excitement that I had personally. And are you here because you want to hear a 7-minute video from my little brother on how he implements potash on his farm and his agronomy business? Because if you're wondering any of those things, you are in the right place. We're going to answer all that today. Why are you here, Neil?
Well, there you go. Well, hey, you invited me. But no, I think the main reason I'm here is obviously to help you launch this wonderful product and help people understand why we did it, and just another tool in the mighty tool shed on agronomics, on dealing with your land and logistics.
Love it. And why are you here, Elston?
Well, for lots of the same reasons as Neil, and for many of the reasons or the questions that you asked the group. And I think at the end of the day, as you mentioned, the N to S ratio, the N to K ratio, once we get those two ratios sorted, the efficiency of our entire systems become much, much better, such that we can reduce the inputs of nitrogen through a balanced equation. And so, as you know, and everyone else should know, my whole thing is about helping guys incrementally make better decisions. And not unlike a hockey coach or a baseball coach, every day you're trying to help people become incrementally better. So today's another day where I hope I can help people become incrementally better.
It just occurred to me that you often use the moniker crop whisperer, but perhaps you're as much or more a farmer whisperer. Okay, folks, so we're all in the right place for the right reasons. Thanks so much for coming, and we're going to get to all that, and we'll keep it as direct and as quick as possible. So I want to start with Neil. How and why did this product, Super KS, which is a combination of potash and sulfur, really we're billing the main feature with an analysis of 00, 35, 30. How did this all come to be, and why did you want to create this product for the market?
Well, I think you hit it basically on your why are you here monologue to start off with. It really did start with a variety of people likely in this participant room that have been asking for potash, or, at least another nutrient in the Bio-Sul spread pattern, because we're already going over the land. That's where it really began, and it's kind of that supply demand side. People kept asking, and we kept looking. Didn't really hit hard until it would have been a couple of years back that Elston started really drilling down on all these tissues that we've been doing over the year for our proof of. And again, most of the participants likely had tissues been done on their farms, and the reason we did those for so long was just to ensure that everybody was getting that sulfur uptake that we were proudly touting when we were actually putting Bio-Sul down. The wonderful thing about these tissues is they always have a few other nutrients that they tell us what else is going on. And for the longest time, we never really paid too much attention to it until a major drill down about, as I said, about 2 years ago. Elston goes through and finds out that, as you said, 68% of those were short on K. And so it really came home that, hey, not only is this going to be a better product logistically, but it's going to help massively in the world of everybody looking to balance their overall nutrient diet and to physically get to a point where we're just eliminating yet another nutrient out of the drill in the springtime. That's the main reason why we started working on this dam.
So you talk a lot about proprietary activated compost and nutrimental nutrients. What sort of special synergies, or what's the kind of the magic sauce when we put these things together that you're anticipating seeing?
Well, again, the whole reason we moved to a nutrimental side of it all is because it slowly feeds the biology that feeds the soil. And it was just kind of a neat little catchword that when you actually look it up in the dictionary, you go, wow, that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish when we were putting Bio-Sul on. So we've moved to that because it's a nice little stick. Neil, the nutrimental guy, right? But ultimately, we have products that we want to see feed that biology in the soil, and that is something, everybody's talking about regenerative, and it's, is that a buzzword? Is it something that people really understand? There's a big difference between sustainable and regenerative. I mean, sustainable and the full-on meaning is straight on keep status quo. Don't let it go down, don't let it go up. Regenerative is actually bringing stuff back. So as most everybody in this room knows, I thrive on animal nutrition and biology and biochemistry. And when you put all three of those together and you get into this world's largest feedlot called your soil, that's what we're trying to accomplish with these products.
Well, we're going to get that all filled in nicely with some of the things that Elston's are going to present here, but walk us through a little bit of the nuts and bolts in terms of the creation of this product and how you're physically putting this together for the market.
Well, it turned into a thing where obviously majority of the potash mined in, well, at least in North America, comes out of your wonderful province of Saskatchewan. So it's been over the years, you're looking for a source that we can utilize that's economically feasible to blend with the Bio-Sul, and first of all, and then B, will work density-wise with the Bio-Sul, so that way it kind of spreads in the same pattern. So there was a few things that we had to try and accomplish. Luckily enough, GFL a few years back put in this gorgeous little Yargus machine that you see here, which is a declining weight belt system. Does a great job of layering the cake and blending this product. This is one of the very first trials that we did here, probably about a month and a half ago. Lance being on this call, I think ended up with this load, the lucky guy. So ultimately that's what we were trying to accomplish. What we did is I had an actual colleague of ours that found the right person in one of these mines companies, and we were able to make contact with these people, and they loved the idea of having our Bio-Sul team. I mean, they looked us up, obviously, found out that Dan does a heck of a job moving the product. Our marketing side is kind of into their mantra of being a little bit different in the world of nutrient. And they allowed us to access this, I don't know if I call it off-spec potash, because it's still 0061. So it's just the screenings from from loading the train.
Right.
Yep.
So how has it been going, putting the two products together? What is it looking like? How are you handling it? How is it getting from here to the producer? What's the plan to get it on?
Well, to say there hasn't been some challenges with this thing, I'd be totally lying to the whole group. The reason the launch hasn't happened probably till today is myself and our group have been working very diligently over the past month and a half to try and make this product as user-friendly as possible. In particular for our trusted applicator team, and for anybody else who wants to try and apply it. Ultimately, I wanted to have it so it was flowable, because some of those questions are going to come up. Is it flowable? Can I bin it? Do this? And that was my ultimate goal on this. Unfortunately, as it sits right now, we could not get it there, and we still can't get it there where we can actually make it come out of the bottom of a trailer. I can attest to that because I think I've shoveled too many trailers here in the last 2 weeks. But anyways, that said, it does spread quite nicely. I think we've got a few guys that that have been a part of your trusted applicator group that are getting it with the agri spreads up to 70, 80 feet. We've got the new leader guys are running at that, I don't know, probably up to 55 or so. So things are coming. It's doing what Bio-Sul did, and I think we're getting a fairly good spread pattern.
Awesome. Well, we have a question here. I really appreciate that. I'd love everybody to put their questions into the Q&A, and I will get to them with our star panelists here, Neil and Elston. And the question is, I want to know if this off-spec potash mixes and spreads accurately, and what happens when it lays on the ground. And does this off-spec potash include chloride? And I have a little bit of show and tell here for everyone that I think ties into this pretty nicely. This is us spreading and pan testing. Neil, you can just maybe tell the audience a little bit of what we're seeing here and how we pan test and why it matters and how you get these nutrients on evenly.
Yeah, so ultimately, one of the main things that we did with Bio-Sul was spend many days pan testing over the last 7 years of Bio-Sul, to the point where, I think the majority of our clients are quite happy with spread pattern that we're getting out there. So when we put the potash together, we needed to make sure it had relatively same density, and it does. I think we're running about 72 pounds on both products, so it's going to be pretty close both ways. So that's was half the battle when we mixed it together. The other part is of course you have the fines as you do in Bio-Sul, and then you have the little bit larger chunks as you do in Bio-Sul, although everything is a lot smaller because you do go through the Argus. And we'll go into the reasoning why we did a little bit of this too agronomically in the rates of application. But ultimately, when you pan test, you're just going doing a three pass. At least I do a 3-pass test to emulate your testing in the field, because of course you get overlaps on the edges, and you just basically put all the pans together, or not all together, but you put all the pans in little tubes, and you take a look, and you can understand that, hey, we've got this much fines, this much bigger particles, and then overall the same amount of product across all the tubes, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? I just got a email from Kevin. Are you guys having trouble hearing me?
No.
Elston, you can hear me okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, I just had an email from Kevin Erickson that he couldn't hear me, but maybe he's just trying to block me out. That could just be, something with you, Kevin. But okay, Bobby says I'm good. If Bobby says I'm good, I'm good. I'm going to keep going. So with the pan testing, of course, that's been something that we've wanted to get this product into the hands of our trusted applicators before we launched. And that, obviously, there's been some challenges, but they're working through it. And we will get this product to you evenly and accurately, or we won't be doing it. Elston, you had a comment to make.
So to finish the answer, and then maybe I missed it because I was busy taking notes here, but it's the off-spec potash that's in the mix is potassium chloride. And so it's got the same chloride content and everything else that we would expect in a regular product. And, Neil did a really good job of explaining how the spreading is going and some of the issues around the blending. But at the end of the day, we're actually killing 3 birds with one stone, not 2.
What's the third bird?
Chloride. Every crop needs chloride. And you got some folks on the call from Montana and the Pacific Northwest, and chloride's a big deal in that world, a big deal.
Well, and actually, Elston and I had these debates many times. Is obviously you need some salt in there. We talk about salt index on a consistent basis when we're talking fertilizers, and we've kind of grown as consumers to be a little afraid of it. Hey, we don't want to put too much salt on. But we've had this debate on whether a natural salt like a potassium chloride, is that the same or is it different than a chemical made salt, as in like a MAP or a ammonium sulfate. And again, Elston's never been able to tell me if there is a difference. I personally think there is. I think natural versus a chemical has always got its things. But regardless, we have to put on a little bit of salt.
So for clarification, beyond the fact that this would be the overs and unders, in terms of the analysis and the content, this is good old straight up potassium chloride like anything else. There's nothing less about it.
Yeah, and sorry, Neil. Yes, and on the salt component, Neil and I can argue about, the whatever, but at the end of the day, the fact that you're broadcasting it means you're diluting the salt effect dramatically, and you're getting away from the issues that are primarily related to salt index, and that is placement with the seed or near the seed. And so, we can get down to the nitty-gritty or the baloney of natural versus synthetic, but at the end of the day, crop, if there's less concentration of salt in the root zone, or very near especially the early roots, that's a good thing. And so with this product, and I'm going to talk about this, we're killing actually 3 birds with 1 stone, which is what I think most of the folks in the call are excited about, right? You do one thing good, but in the whole process of that for the US guys, you're looking after 3 things instead of 1 thing.
Excellent. So we had some questions here, and I think this is going to lead to some good conversation. What are the potential synergies when applying Super KS with a high organic matter product like manure?
What are the implications wise?
Yeah, what are the potential synergies?
Well, I mean, I think as we started here, whether some people caught some of my conversation before we got going on live, but yesterday, for instance, I physically was at a place down in that Lethbridge area that composts and uses compost for their potatoes, almost 10,000 tons worth. So great question. We used to do it all the time with a variety of different products and saying, well, that guy's already going to go on, you know, in this guy's case, they're going on a 10 ton per acre with the compost blend. The main thing with animal manures, as most people know, is it's lacking sulfur. And in some cases, depending on what kind of bedding they use, is going to lack some fair substantial amount of K. So if you can go and put it in, whether it's in your bedding pack prior to, or if you're putting it in your compost row, you'd have great synergies. It would work like a hot darn. You just got to know how much blend to put into your compost to make sure that you got your application rate right.
Cool. So what is the rate of Bio-Sul at 3 and 5 year rate with potash? Can we ask for different rates of potash in this mix, 60 pounds or 200 pounds, or will it just be a standard mix?
Good question. Yeah, no, the wonderful thing about that Yargis, we can put a blend in there and it'll kick it out. So yeah, you can ask for different rates. That is going to be up to Dan and the marketing team on, you know, what that minimum order is, because we don't want to just do like 6 ton of it specifically for whatever, but 100% we're going to end up doing different rates.
Absolutely. I think for us, we're looking at potential 2-year rates and 3-year rates. And I think some of the considerations are, have you had Bio-Sul on before? Is this a base application to get that high rate of application of sulfur on top of the soil surface? Or, you know, is this a maintenance ration? So my brother's done 5 years on the farm now. He's looking at a maintenance ration every 2 years. Likely he's going to put on 120 pounds of this product at 003530. Now, when we're going on demand to the market, physically, we can do different blends. But over the winter, I think we're going to be mixing a standard blend of 003530, which is 58% potash and 42% Bio-Sul, correct?
Yep.
And there's also 003035, but we had some different requests. So we can likely do some custom blending if we're producing it on demand, and if there's enough of a purchase order that makes us worth our while logistically. So I apologize for anybody that can't, I guess if you can't hear me, you can't hear me apologizing, but you know, Derek Talon said he can't hear what I'm saying. So I'll try not to talk too much because I'm not the expert here. I'm just a marketer. But how does surface applied potash become plant available throughout the growing season? That's I think one of the big ones we're getting. Who wants to tackle that one?
Go ahead, Elston.
I can take a run at it, and it's, well, I don't even know where to start. So in the good old days, you guys got to all remember that I'm coming up 65 years old, and I've been at this since I was fairly young. So we got 40-ish years of research experience, and I was blessed enough to be hanging out with a lot of different folks in the University of Alberta and Alberta agriculture when they were actually friggin' relevant, okay? And so I was involved in some research back in the day with Jim Robertson and a whole bunch of other industry people, where they put out trials with massive one-time applications and compared that to annual applications and annual applications on top of the massive applications, and did it for many years at many sites. And the conclusions back in the day with the systems that were placed then was that potassium, and then other research, phosphorus. When you broadcast them, yes, they're essentially soil immobile because of chemistry. So in the short term, the efficiency of them is diminished, but over the long term, both of those nutrients, when you broadcast them, is essentially 95% over the long term. So you give up a little bit in the front end, and you gain the same efficiency over the long term. Since then, we've learned with a number of different projects that the active root system in especially direct seeding systems is the top 2 or 3 inches, which is wonderful and also problematic depending on the growing season and the system that you're in. So if you've got surface applied immobile nutrients like potassium or phosphorus, and it's in the top 1 or 2 inches of the soil, that's the most active portion. I learned some stuff from Neil this morning already, which is kind of shocking, but that is where the livestock of the soil are most aggressive. And so when you get these flushes of moisture or good growing conditions, you're not only enhancing the ability of the plant to grow, you're enhancing the ability of the plant to utilize the nutrients that are in that upper portion of the soil. And again, that's a really good thing. And then there's some downsides to that. But that's why surface broadcasting of some of these typically assumed low availability nutrients, because of the method of application, actually works pretty well. And you just activate that top part of the soil profile where the roots are most active, where the livestock are working their hardest. And the old research, again, just to restate what I've already said, showed that yes, the first year response was less than if you banded it or seed placed it, but over the long term, the efficiency was almost identical, if not better.
Well, and as we'll hear in Terry's recorded conversation later, it doesn't hurt to have some potash seed placed. Nobody is saying that you have to be all in on one or the other. But let's face it, this is a logistics play. I've talked to a producer who said, I know I need potash, but we know logistics trumps agronomy so many times in our world, just because. And he's not even using potash because he doesn't want to put that shit through his drill because it's abrasive and it wears things down. And we know what we're paying for drills these days, and we know all about downtime and various things. So this being a long-term supplemental building program that, because of the price points and because of the biology and because of the nature of these nutrients, we're offering a program that will help you build your soils while your yields go up. And that's what we showed dramatically for 5 years with Bio-Sul on our farm. And also, we're going to anticipate this being part of that growth. We didn't increase our yields this year. I think that trend line on the canola was one crop that didn't have a 5-year high. But there's some more logistics, nuts and bolts questions. Being hauled for 4 hours with this product shakeout. Dump on the ground, how much will break down if not applied after 1 inch or 5 inches of rain? Would this be a waste if rain breaks down like it does in the field when applied? Need tarps now in the field. Storage shed. The way that I look at this, before I pitch this over to the other people here, we have a network of trusted applicators who are the greatest logistic people on planet Earth who will figure this out and are taking this product this fall to see what works and what doesn't work. But we've already had it on our farm with a little bit of rain on it, and there might be a little bit more salt leaching, but overall, we didn't see an issue with it. In fact, the product's so dry, when it gets a little bit of moisture on it, it does not hurt. And so, tackling this, there might be a few nuances, and we don't want to leave it out in the rain for 40 days and for 40 nights. But so far it handles much like Bio-Sul. And as we progress, yes, some of our trusted applicators may opt for tarps underneath the product we're looking at from the oil field. Tarps on top of the product if they want to store it for longer periods of time. you see in our network these people with the lift trailers and the spin spreaders, and this is all logistics that our guys love to dig into, tackle and figure out and make it work. But it could be a little bit more challenging logistically. But again, we're killing two nutrients with one stone here. And the beauty is, we're going from putting 44 pounds of product on per year per acre per customer to 80 to 100. So how much does that translate into, efficiencies versus trying to put it through the seeder? Do you guys have any comments about the storage, handling, trucking of it, that kind of thing, Neil?
Yeah, not a whole bunch. I think basically how you mentioned here, it's up to our trusted applicators to do what they've been doing with the Bio-Sul. They've done a great job of making sure that that gets on properly and doesn't cause chaos. And so, everybody's got their own different plans. This is the funnest part about dealing with trusted applicators who have this farming mentality, is everybody will have those different plans and thought processes. And we saw that in the years of Bio-Sul. And I guess I just wanted to put a little bit of another thought process. We haven't got into application rate a whole bunch, or, what are we planning on as far as this? One of the other main reasons that we built this product was we understand that majority of the land that people farm, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, is rented. And so we have this great big rental pool. And the one thing that we did with Bio-Sul is we kind of eliminated ourselves and having people, because we have a product that was lasting 4 or 5 years. And so what we wanted to do with this product was have a product that was a better price point for basically 3 nutrients, as Elston has kindly pointed out. We wanted to have a better price point and then only have it so it's a 2-year product. So we're talking 120 pounds to 200 pounds, depending on what the guy wants to accomplish, but putting it on every 2nd year. So that way, majority of us who have rented land, we don't feel like, hey, we're going to do this for my neighbor, who's going to take over this land in 3 years from now. So that was kind of the premise of why we did this. And it was to basically, we love our participants' faces and want to see them more than once every 5 years. So it'd be nice to kind of have a product that actually gets into their rotation a little more often.
Yeah, Bio-Sul is kind of like a Toyota half ton. It just lasts too long. You can't even get out of it. It just keeps going forever. So yeah, that'll be a great feature for people that are on rented land, or don't always let's face it, capital is another bottleneck as well. Some people can't invest in a nutrient 5 years up front, even though it's the best price on the market. So breaking it down to 1 or 2 years, I think will be efficient. So Elston, we can continue throwing questions your guys' way as we get them, if we get them. I'm looking forward to more questions, but you have a little bit of a presentation, which is sort of shock and awe on the potassium side.
I do, and I'm going to have to be very cognizant of time, but you need to let me share the screen.
You bet. Sorry about that. Make co-host.
All right.
We're upgrading you for no charge.
No charge. Where am I?
You're in a canola field, Elston.
Where am I? The morning after. Where am I? Oh, you got the Big Lebowski. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to blast through this, and you know what? We've touched on quite a few of the things already. Neil did a really good job of setting the stage, and the questions that were asked are, the really important ones. But so we're talking about Super KS, the blends, and it sounds like we've got, some opportunity to modify that a little bit. And I think that wonderful Yargis machine that's sitting in Regina has the capability of doing lots of different things, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but one of the beautiful things about Super KS is it's looking after 3 nutrients at the same time. And in the early days of Bio-Sul, one of the things that everybody said, well, gee whiz, I would love to use this product if we could kill more than one bird with one stone. And we're attacking 2 And in some regions where they actually appreciate chloride, we're attacking 3. And then, this is, given the world as it is, I'm kind of with this dude. So
Translander.
days.
Oh, you learn new terms every day in 2020. I tell you, like words you didn't even know that you got to respect. Got to respect the translander.
It's like he's having a Kahlua and milk or something for the morning. But no brainers. So again, the people on this thing have seen this, and we've alluded to it. The two most important ratios in a crop is the N to S ratio, and the second one is the N to K ratio. And once those ratios get sorted out, the efficiency of your nutrient management systems goes up dramatically, and the confidence, the probability of everyone growing bigger crops on a more consistent basis goes up as well. And then there's that one. And so it's all about cascading results. You do 1 or 2 things right, and that all cascades into 3, 4, 5, 6 things that become more efficient. And I think, for everybody that's on the call, pretty much they're looking for those synergies that create cascading synergies. And I think that's really powerful.
Hey, Elston, and just before I forget, so yesterday I was at a place where they were talking about, essentially they had the same parts per million of potash in one field, which was a little sandier, versus another field, which had a little more clay. And of course, their tissue, as a soil test, it would say never ever put potash in either one. But as a tissue test, these guys did enough research and agronomy, because they have some in-house stuff, that they did their tissues and found that they were shockingly short of potash on the more clayey soil. So I guess there was one thing that, hey, if I'm one of these people on this call and say, well, shoot, my parts per million or my soil test is coming back with lots of potash, do I need this stuff?
Yeah, the standard, and the 406 guys are on the call, and we talked about this 2 days ago. The standard, written in granite deal with most labs is, if you've got 150 parts per million in the top 6 inches, you're golden. And we know from all of the tissues that have been taken and everything else that that's unmitigated bullshit in today's world, because that was all built on, years and years and decades ago research. And so the next question for the farm that you were on that clay soil, number one, if you're thinking like a plant and you're in the clay soil, what are your roots seeing? Number 2, if you're on a clay soil and it's relatively high in magnesium, what are your roots seeing? And what, in both instances, especially on the magnesium and or sodium side, if the soil is dominated by magnesium or sodium, the soil is really, really dense, and the root systems can't explore the soil, and the root systems can't actually see the potassium that's in the soil because of the density and because of the overwhelmingness of the magnesium. So my guess is, given southern Alberta, there's probably a big interference, not only with the clay percentage, but also the magnesium and or sodium concentration, base saturation of those two. And from a plant's perspective, if my roots can't grow where they need to grow because of the density of the soil, then I can't actually see the potassium that the lab thinks that is there.
So essentially what you're saying is the buffet can have lots of salad on it, but if your kid doesn't go and grab it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, or if it's covered with saran wrap or plexiglass shields like today, you can see it there, but if you can't get through the plexiglass or the saran wrap, you can't get it, right? I mean,
full of analogies this morning.
You got to spank the kids so they eat the salad. That's
Can't do that.
So I don't know if that makes any sense, but again, a lot of us have heard this, and Neil actually talked about a much expanded data set. But when it finally clicked into my pea brain, a few years ago, I looked at a whole bunch of field scale Bio-Sul tissues because everybody was still, you know, after 4 and 5 years, you know, that Bio-Sul just doesn't work. The particle size is too big, and all that kind of stuff, and there's lumps and bumps and everything. So we're looking
I'm
at.
mocking you, Lance.
No, I am. Well, one field out of 247 was low in sulfur, 57% in that data set, and it's a bigger number now. We're deficient in potassium, and I know I've said this over and over and over again, but the thing about potassium is that if your new tissue is deficient, your old tissue is screamingly deficient because there's only 4 nutrients that can be cannibalized in the plant, and that's NPK and magnesium. So if your new tissue is deficient, that means the rest of your plant is screamingly deficient, which means your nitrogen can't work effectively, and a whole bunch of the other nutrients can't work effectively either. And the other surprise in this data set, and I don't know exactly what that shakes out, but I would assume it's similar. A big chunk of the over half of the fields or field scale trials were low in boron, and we can go on that for a half an hour. But sulfur was not the problem, and so there's a whole big conversation here. When it comes to K, if the plants are deficient in the new tissue, that means the old tissue is deficient, and then there's a negative cascading of effects that are a result of all of that. So that's where I finally super clued into what was going on, and then I refer back to this bestseller, which is being re-edited and republished shortly. Was lucky enough to be part of that, and this is one thing that most folks in the industry don't know. So the people on the call, if you can remember this, is if we use molybdenum and nickel as the 2 least required nutrients and then rate everything relative to that, boron and iron are the king and queen of micros. But here's the order of requirement in crops on average, and there are some exceptions. Nitrogen is 1, potassium's 2, most people don't know that, calcium's 3, magnesium's 4, and then comes the rest of the nutrients that we're looking at. And so, you know, I keep harping on this, but it's really, really important when we talk about this particular product. So at the end of the day, if we spend some time looking at what the total requirement of NPKs is per bushel, and then here's the numbers. So here's spring wheat. There's the numbers. You'll see the nitrogen number. You see the potassium, the phosphorus, the sulfur. You can go down. You can see that in general, the second number is a pretty big number. And so how much has the industry been focused on this? Not very much. When you get into the actual requirements, what the crop needs to obtain those yield goals over here, and everybody's yield goal is different, and I've got a calculator that can help folks with different yield goals. You can see that the numbers are really, really big, and when you compare those numbers to what's applied, it's kind of scary. The cool thing about potassium versus nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur is the bulk of the potassium is not in the grain. The bulk of the potassium is in the straw. And you can see, you know, based on some literature, 70% of the nitrogen is in the grain, 76% of the phosphorus is in the grain, and 54% of the sulfur is in the grain. A much smaller amount is in the grain when it comes to potassium, which means the rest of it's in the straw. And the cool thing about potassium, when it's in the straw, it's mobile, but as soon as it hits the soil, it becomes relatively immobile, which means at the end of the day, when we keep growing more yields, we're primarily direct seeding. The immobile nutrients and characteristics of the soil accumulate at the soil surface, and this is some of the very first stratification research that Jill and I and others did way back in, I guess, the early 90s. All of the phosphorus is in the top 3 inches. All of the potassium is in the top 3 inches. Below that level, the soil is actually deficient. And so if you're thinking like this plant, and you're into a dry spell during a critical growth period and your root systems are all down here, you got problems. And I think that has a lot to do with why there's a lot of disappointing canola yields this year. But I've got a whole other presentation that's suited to that conversation.
So what happens there, Elston, if you pull your straw off year in, year out?
Well,
as
then
far as for your critters, or
you,
sell it to your neighbor with critters?
yeah, you diminish the total amount of potash in the system, and you would diminish the stratification to some extent. But at the end of the day, that's almost double plus ungood.
There you go.
We are in 1984, sports fans. I'm reading it for the third time. That would be double plus ungood. If you haven't read it, read it. So, that's a great question. So when the surface soil is dry, immobile nutrients cannot be accessed by roots. Roots are not active in dry soil. I think this is a big part of why we have such erratic and disappointing canola yields this year. That's for another day. And so, okay, that's some old Alberta Ag research, which translated into AgriTrend research. Maybe it's all biased because apparently I've become biased over the years. Here's some stuff that the Hootie brothers use, and the Hefty brothers use.
Hootie Brothers? You're thinking of the rock band.
Hefty brothers use. Yeah, I was listening
Hootie
to
and the
some.
Blowfish.
So here's a whole bunch of treatments and a whole bunch of different depths: 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, and you got all these different systems. So let's just boil it down to the essence. And here we've got a plowed system that actually mixes everything together. So you've got a nice distribution of nutrients down the 8-inch profile. Over here is no-till, and I can't remember how many years this has been no-till, but everything's accumulated at the top. And so it's not just happening in Western Canada. It's not just happening in whatever geography it is. It's not just happening in my, dreams in the middle of the night. It's happening all over the place. Of course, we got all of these. And I seriously believe that this is a really important thing. This is phosphorus, but it can be potassium. It can be organic matter. It can be pH. It can be all of those immobile things that we try to deal with. And as an industry, we need to start thinking about it. And I think one of the things about Super KS is it's trying to attack some of those issues. So yields are increasing. This is some stuff Neil and I did 3 years ago. You can find this data everywhere. As time goes on, yields are increasing. This is canola and wheat in Canada. This is some more canola and wheat in Canada. This is some other crops in the United States and around the world. So yields are increasing. There's no doubt about that. Because on average, we're doing a better job. We got better varieties and everything else. But here's what's really cool is since about 1985-ish, the sale of phosphorus and potash fertilizer is pretty much leveled out. And what does that mean in terms of the overall farming practices? We're mining PKS and all the micros. So we got to do a better job of all that. And here's some more information. I'm not pulling these graphs out of my butt. And if you take that data and you can turn it into the annual applications of nutrients, nitrogen continues to go up. And from about right here, phosphorus and potassium, and I'm not even talking about sulfur because it's in the same ballpark.
So Elston, on that, based on that nitrogen going up, are we actually moving? Because we have some very good agronomists out there that are saying, "Hey, we're putting too much nitrogen on." Basically, is it because we're really skewing the N to S ratio and that N to K ratio that you started off with?
Yeah, we're creating a greater imbalance in the system, right? For lots of people on the call, they're paying more attention, but the industry in general, when you're just farming recipes, you're skewing the ratios negatively, and there's some dire results that are a consequence of that. So you got flat. I think this is potassium, and then the way I like to think about it is it's like an elastic band at some point that the more you stretch that band, the more it's going to have a propensity to break. And I think this is phosphorus. And so again, same, it's flat, and it's been flat for a long time. And we got to address this stuff because the double plus on good with the stratification and the lack of replacement of nutrients is causing a lot of stress in our systems. So when you look at those numbers and you do some really rough math, in North America, that stretching of the elastic band translates into about 3.5 million tons of phosphorus and potassium net soil losses and 1.2 million tons of net sulfur losses. So at some point, this is going to become we're going to crash. It's going to be a plane wreck, a train wreck, whatever it's going to be. And sooner or later, we have to address that. This is some IPNI when they were still alive. It's just showing that phosphorus and potassium levels have declined over time. And we all know that the sulfur test is so variable that it's not really reliable, but there's a bunch of background stuff. And so if you take this and do some really conservative math, let's say on all of these acres in North America, we're at a deficit of 15 pounds of phosphate, 15 pounds of potassium, and 5 pounds of sulfur. That translates into many, 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 many millions of tons of annual mining equivalent. So anytime we can get a product into the system that kills 2 or 3 birds with one stone, 4 would be even better, 5 would be fantastic. I think growing forward, that's a really powerful thing. And so Batman agrees, and let's look a little bit closer. So if we look a little bit closer, we're all familiar with the Mulder chart. The Mulder chart does not contain sulfur because sulfur enhances the utilization of everything. So within Super KS, there's sulfur, which enhances the utilization of all other nutrients. And there's potassium there as well that helps with that process. This is Ishmael Chakmak. I constantly learn stuff from this guy. And a little while ago, I learned that it's not potassium by itself in concert with chloride that does this controlling of the stomata. It's actually sulfur that orchestrates the concert of potassium and chloride. And so I don't know how many people in the whole call know this, but it's actually excessive sulfur in the system that creates excess cysteine, which actually controls ABA, not the group, but the hormone. And it's hormone that gets triggered to help the plant close the stomata. So when you're in a period of drought stress and your root systems are down below the top area that has the most nutrients, if that plant is loaded with sulfur and it has access to potassium in its older tissue and stuff, then you have a plant that's much, much, much more resistant to all kinds of stress, but in this case, drought stress. And so some cool pictures that Ishmael relayed to from published material, not stuff that Neil and I just thought of. Lots of data here, lots of references. And what they showed in all of this is that the only nutrient that was highly correlated towards the opening, the rapidity of opening and closing of stomata was sulfate. Potassium, here's potassium, whoops. Everybody in the good old days used to think it was potassium and chloride. You might argue there's some correlation there, but when it comes to sulfur, it's huge. And then when you look at specific nutrients, these are pretty much but sulfate goes up, ABA goes up. And so his conclusion was high levels of sulfur in the system make your potassium and chloride and more efficient, makes your ability of the plant to respond to drought stress more efficient. And in most of our worlds, that's a very powerful thing. some more stuff here is too complicated, but what sulfate does is it turns into cysteine, which triggers these other things, which eventually gets to the ABA over here, which controls the opening and closing of the stomata. And I know this is too much too fast, but at the end of the day, the rate of application of sulfur, which turns into sulfate, which gets into the system, which then turns into all of these other things that we don't have time to talk about, but glutathione and methionine and cysteine and everything else is a very powerful thing. And kaboom, kabang, plants close stomata when you can read it for yourself. So, so to continue the no-brainer, Super KS is killing 2-3 birds with one stone. It's looking after some of the stratification, and hopefully in that very rapid presentation of a lot of information, some of it repetitive for many of you, you can see why I've been excited about these concepts ever since I became involved with Biocycle, GFL, and everything else. And they're just no-brainer strategies. And like I joked the other day, logistics trumps Biden. Oh, I mean, logistics trumps economics. And that's all
Love
I
it.
got.
Love it. Well, we haven't had any more questions. I'm surprised, but if there's no more questions, we'll just wrap it up. And it's been a pretty good solid hour, but I appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully we resolve the why of the reason that you came. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to share this recording with the world because I think it's that important. I'll be sending everybody an email and putting it out on social media. I did have a 7-minute, 8-minute recording from my brother who's filming today with Precision AI for the testing they've been doing for the drone technology, the PIC project and all that. So he couldn't make it, but I'll share that. I'll share that in the email so that you guys hear what Terry has to say about how they're going to implement this product and with the potash. And I have a question here from Graham McMurtry, our logistics expert. Ask Elston what he thinks about 150 pounds Bio-Sul and 33 pounds of K blend, basically a 3-year sulfur and a little shot of K for places that don't use lots of K.
Well, it's a start.
It's a start. Better than nothing.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, if you go back to the slides, right, the relative requirements of K to P and S is dramatically higher. And so a start it's just like coaching. If you can get a player to start to head in the right direction, whatever it might be, maybe they can only turn right if they're a hockey player and you're encouraging them to figure out how to turn left and they stumble and they fall, and stumble and they fall. I mean, that's awesome. At least they're starting. And so it's not where I'd want to be, but I mean, realistically and everything else, it's a start because most of the industry pays no heed to potassium. A big application of potassium and across, the average grower in this industry, it might be, I don't know, 15 or 20 pounds in cereals and 0 to 10 on canola. So,
the ultimate answer is get somebody like Elston Solberg or Matt Gosling or Matt Mace or Terry Aberhart or Phil Parker or whoever in your dog that's an agronomist to help you on your farm. Look at your soil tests, look at your tissue tests, consult people, ask questions, try some out, see what difference. Like a good agronomist can tell you what crops and what soils you see a response in K. I mean, you won't see it every crop every year, right? There's so much variable. We're dealing with nature here, but we're trying to make it simple for you to take care of these big issues so you can get on with your day and deal with other things that are major challenge in your business. Because we all know we got major challenges in growing our business. Farming's no different. Perhaps it's harder than your average, hamburger stand.
There was a quick question there. Sorry, there was a quick question. I want Elston before we get there. Was whether or not we help with stratification or by crop dressing, or
yes, let's answer that.
does
Yeah.
our application make a difference there, Elston?
Say
Or
that-
does it? Or, I mean, sometimes we don't fix all, right? So.
Jake Legui is asking, how does Super KS help with stratification? Does it move in the soil differently than potash?
It's gonna move. So the chloride's gonna move through the soil rapidly because it's an anion. The sulfur, once it gets converted in the surface, is going to be sulfate, so it will move rapidly. Potassium is going to be potassium. So, one of the things I like about the strategies with this product is that if we fall apply it, surface broadcast it, we optimize the sulfur, we optimize the chloride, we get the potassium in place. Some of it's going to move in the top, inch or two of the active root zone. But then we go along and we harrow, and then we might seed. And all of that's going to stir the potassium into deeper levels of the soil. Is it the ultimate solution? No. But again, over the long term, the longer term, you're giving away a little bit of short-term efficiency of the potassium while gaining better efficiency from the sulfur and the chloride. And over the long term, you're going to have the same efficiency as if you seed placed it or banded it. So at the end of the day, it becomes a question of, can I get a whole bunch more shit out of my $1 million seeder that's going to cause me all kinds of grief, and accept the advantages of logistics, a few of the disadvantages of short-term agronomics, and at the end of the day, I think you're going to be ahead of the game.
Well, we had a question that really ties in with that, and maybe we've already answered to some of that, but I want to make sure we get to what everybody's asking here. What's the benefit of spreading potash on top versus incorporating it? Just logistics. I would question, are people putting down the kind of rates like we saw demonstrated by Elston as required, not to crash long-term and create building in our soils while still growing our yields? Can you do that in the drill? Can you do that in a drill? Do you want to do that in a drill? It doesn't blend great. It doesn't play nice in your drill. It's incredibly abrasive. And this is an option that helps you get enough on. And there's different ways to get it close to the seed or foliar applications, but this is a big, big, big chunk of the agronomic play that the logistics of it allows you to get there. Fair to say?
Well, yeah. And I mean, one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle, just like Bio-Sul, is you're putting on larger amounts. So the fact that you have less efficiency from equivalent amounts in the short term, that's compensated by the fact that you're putting on larger amounts. It's hand grenades and,
Horseshoes.
But at the end of the day, by putting on more because of the rate of application, and there's some synergy between the three nutrients that are in the system, the fact that the research might say, well, on the equivalent rates it's less efficient, but you're putting on more, so we're kind of splitting hairs. And it's a great, I mean, any of these concepts are a great way to get the ball rolling in the right direction.
Plus, when you use any of these products, you're physically recycling and solving Mother Nature's issues, which is good. Trust me, going to be a really, really big deal going forward. You can tell your city cousins you're doing a lot of good in the world by recycling waste from urban centers with our product line. So I think that's it for the questions. Price. Contact your local trusted applicator, but I can guarantee you it's competitive with potash and same great price on Bio-Sul. Dale, if you wanted to contact me, certainly can. But of course, there's going to be different blends. But I think in Saskatchewan right now, we're delivering 003530, the standard blend for $405 a metric ton, which if you do all the math and listen to what Elston's saying, put it all together, it's going to be very attractive in the market. Very attractive.
One last comment from me, and it's kind of some of my aha moment with what Neil was saying earlier, is that when we're killing three birds with one stone with this product, and shortly there'll likely be other products that are killing 4 and 5. Everybody gets really horny about regenerative agriculture right now, and my conclusion until just recently is that one of the key building blocks, or two key building blocks behind regenerative agriculture, is animals and cover crops. But if we're doing a good job of balancing the nutrimental nutrients in the soil, we're actually feeding the biggest feedlot in the world, and that's in the soil. That's powerful. And it would only take a nutritionist to come up with that concept, but that actually, that actually was very, very powerful for me. So thanks, Neil. Thanks, Uno.
We want you to eat meat. We want you to use Super KS. We want you to be safe and happy and profitable. Thanks so much for everyone that's done business with us and going to do business with us. We really appreciate it. And let's all be extremely grateful this Thanksgiving for how well the harvest went, all this beautiful fall. We've got some open sky. We're delivering Bio-Sul to beat the band. It's going to be a record year. I think we're going to be about at 1.3 million acres that's sold and delivered and spread here. I don't know, Neil, what are you guys at for acres since you started in 2013?
Oh, shoot. Yeah, close to that 1 million acre mark out here too. So it's I can't give you the exact number like you keep it, but it's definitely getting close.
It's been great. It's been incredible, and we're taking another step towards the whole acre. So stay tuned. There's going to be more action, but yeah, we appreciate it. Let us know if you're interested in getting some on the farm. There's a lot of questions about availability. We still have some availability. I'd say 3,000 to 4,000 metric tons to play with this fall. We just got things set up. So the more we get out, the better it is for us to understand how best to deliver this to the market. But it's going to be, I think, a very, very popular product, a needed product in Western Canada. It's going to do a lot of good. And thanks so much, Neil. It's going to be a blast working with you going forward here as your distributor. Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and Elston, of course. Thank you for all the support you've given us. You were in the very first Bio-Sul meeting in Langeberg in the farm shop. Back in the day when there's 15 people there, and
you're the purple snow. You're the purple snow.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Okay, we did it. Hopefully we answered all your whys. We'll post the recording on the internet. You can contact us through email, snail mail, cell phone, texting, social media, AgVisor Pro. Get a hold of us or one of our dealers. We'll get you some product into your hand, and we'll get that potash in your soils. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Great Thanksgiving. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Elston.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, Neil, you're going to give free turkeys to everybody that's on the webinar? You're that kind of guy.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
Hop in the truck. Well, you have a good Thanksgiving with your family. You too, Elston. Thank you. Yeah. Bye for now.